Welcome to The Corner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to The Corner.
Hello everyone, this is my pleasure to welcome Jay Riola today. Hey Jay, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the opportunity.
My name is Benny Bonsu. I am the director of daily content for Olympics.com.
Welcome Niall today, Niall from Move.
Normal's boring. Let's remain fun at all times.
I'm Mariana Gutierrez. I'm head of the Liga MX Feminil.
I currently am the CEO and co-founder of a marketplace platform called Sports Tech Match.
Here is my privilege to have a long-time friend in the industry, Jan Alessi. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Jean-Baptiste. Very well. The privilege is mine, believe me. Bhavesh, nice to have you here.
Great to be here with you, Sam.
Usually we start a little bit with a bit of background from your side. So just for the people, like you are the executive VP, so the vice president of strategy and innovation at the Orlando Magic, so the franchise within the NBA. Okay, so really starting to focus on the data. Now I start to see the pattern. So from the ticketing, you started to expand a bit more to, or the vertical, or you took over a bit more the business strategy as a whole, applying potentially the same methodology in terms of understanding the customers, understanding the needs from the sponsors in terms of what you need in terms of delivery, potentially showcasing them data or what's the value for them in terms of being your partners and all the rest of the activities, I guess.
Correct. My role, and in many ways, my department's role is to act as an internal agency in many respects, where we're leveraging data and we're helping ticket sales or sponsorship or premium sales, in our retention teams, better understand their customers, make better decisions, use data to their advantage. And so we really kind of the fundamentals of our business strategy and innovation team is data management, research, insights, business intelligence, digital marketing and other marketing technology. Like we run all of our data-driven marketing areas. So our email, our website, our app, online paid advertising. But then we also, as a department, and this is kind of really became more of my focus in around 2018, was long-term strategic planning and innovation. And
that's what I'm about to ask. It's like, this I understand. I mean, if I can make a parallel, like back in the days, 2017 at UEFA, with the new presidents coming in, we started to have what we call very pompous world, but it was the intelligence center. And the idea was to say, okay, new strategy, and you need data and innovation at the core of it to actually enforce the long-term plan for 2020 until 2024 strategy and even beyond. So I was about to ask you, when does innovation kicks in, or is it because it was more something back in 2017, 2018, where you had new tech, potentially even more startups coming up, and so there was a need as well in terms of leveraging the outside, so the external, while I love what you said in terms of being an internal consultancy. I saw myself as the UEFA Innovation Hub as an internal consultancy, helping the colleagues as well internally. So I really like the parallel there in terms of like, you're not just leveraging the outside, it's how you transform the company from within, like really helping them, but how do you accompany them in terms of like cultural and mindset change from a pure medium to long term. So that's why I was asking, I was wondering, when does innovation kicks in, and what does it change a little bit from the pure data driven and support you can have from a pure business insights, data research perspective that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think, so a couple things that I would respond to with that. We, especially early on after 2010, were very focused on operationalizing analytics and just, better pricing our tickets, better predicting customer behavior, season ticket member retention, member acquisition, launching a CRM system and running our marketing and our sales campaigns more effectively. But what we also started to do was, as we had built predictive models to predict customer behavior, we really started to understand what were some of the factors that were most important in determining whether a season ticket holder was going to renew. And I think where we started to, even when innovation wasn't part of my title or I wasn't oversight of it, we started to take insights from our commitment to data and analytics and understand how we could develop better products for our customers, better experiences for our customers. And I think that we were being inventive and innovative and trying to kind of modernize some of the more traditional and rigid ticketing products. And so if you haven't heard about our Magic Money program, we in 2014 started to allow our season ticket holders to return games that they were unable to attend back to us. And so instead of just telling them, hey, you can resell them, you can forward them to a friend or let them go unused, we knew that overall utilization was the top behavioral predictor of whether they were going to renew their membership. So giving them a convenient way to give us the tickets back, convert the value of that ticket into a digital currency for them that they can use to customize their experience however they want. And so over the course of the season, we play 41 regular season home games. You can return 15 games, create a balance of Magic Money, which is the name we give to the currency, and then upgrade your seats, bring a group of friends to a game, pay for concessions or merchandise, and really flex your investment however you want.
My name is Benny Bonsu. I am the director of daily content for Olympics.com. Also, what was important is that when I first started broadcasting, there wasn't many women like me in the sports industry, especially in the UK, and especially being a woman of color. So that meant I didn't have a lot of mentors. I didn't have people that I could go to who could give me advice on what to do, what not to do. But what I did have is that I had a lot of allies, so someone like Andy Curran, who at the time was the managing director for Sky Sports in the UK, who would, pull me aside and say, look, you've got incredible talent. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, keep going, and he became almost like a father figure for me in sports. But I also realized that with the door open for me, I have a responsibility to open it for others, especially women, and not just women of color, but women from all walks of life. So for me, I think I won the Leaders Under 40 in 2019 because of the work that I've done across the board. Ever since I got my first opportunity at the BBC, I'd always try and bring somebody else in or mentor another person. And I've done that throughout my whole career. So that was really important for me. Once I got the Leaders Under 40, use that opportunity to educate more women, but also get more allies. And if you're going to change things, the allies has to be men, because they are in the room. And if I'm the only one in the room, it doesn't make sense. I need to get them as allies to get more of us in the room. So, the Sports for a New Era, great opportunity to actually train the next leaders within the industry, pull them up, tell them what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, but also an opportunity for me to learn from the younger people. They're not even young because I'm still young, but I'm learning from the younger. What they're doing and what I also need to learn. And for me, this is really, really important. So every time I get the opportunity, I do go and mentor. I do share the knowledge. I also take the opportunity to learn. And then what I learn, I also make sure I'm implementing within my team, within OCS, and what we do at Olympics.com. Because, and I say this all the time, in coming into the industry the way I did, I got this responsibility that I didn't ask for, but it's a responsibility I have to take seriously because as a woman of color within this position, there isn't many of us. So people look at you kind of, look, you are representing all of us. And unfortunately for me, I was born in Africa. I was raised in the UK. and then I do a lot in the US. So I have a whole group of people that are like, you're repping for us. So you need to make sure, you're getting things right, but most importantly, you're shining the light on us. So for me, every time I get the opportunity to share the knowledge, learn, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, that's transmission, and that whole side of things where it's a moving industry, but a slow moving industry in terms of gender equality. But we'll get back to it a little bit later down the road, if that works for you. And just in terms of your sport, so you spent a long time working for the NBA in multiple ways, and you're also part of the board of directors of Basketball England. Did you just get attached to basketball in general, or was it really where you were coming from and where you wanted to work?
Like I told you, I started doing sports at the age of 10. By the age of 12, I was already part of our local sports organization, Haringey Sports Development. And then my cousins and my siblings, also heavily in basketball, got scholarships and went on to the States, and, even went on to play in the NBA. When the NBA first came into the UK, I was one of the first people they reached out to help them build, where should we put our offices? Who do we need to be working with? What do we do to activate within the UK? And, they had one of their team members actually come to my school to meet me, to take me to lunch, to have this conversation. So that's where it all started, helping the NBA establish themselves in the UK, but also how do we then start telling the stories? Who should we be working with? What media outlets should we be talking to? Who are the people that are active in basketball in the community? So that's where it all kicked off. And I've always been part of it. So from NBA UK to NBA Europe to NBA Africa, it's really helping grow the brand and talking about the brand and what they want to do and achieve. And Basketball England, it was a natural progression, because when I was way younger and I was in education, the area in which I grew up in, Tottenham, there wasn't many things for young people to do out of school hours. So I started a basketball club at the time called the Hawks Basketball Academy. And what it was is that the kids would come to me after school, and I would coach myself, my younger brother at the time, sadly, who's passed away, Benson. We started this basketball club that allowed young people to come train, also learn leadership skills, and also mentoring. And we did that for many years. And I was one of those people that used to sit on the side and, talk about the fact that the Basketball England is not doing enough. They need to do more, and I was criticizing. And then, the basketball players in London were like, Benny, you're the only person that can change things. Like, you need to join the board. And at the time, I was like, I'm not joining the board. You're not doing this. They're not doing that. They're like, yeah, but you're telling us we can't do anything to change it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of The Corner. This is my pleasure and privilege to welcome Niall today. Niall from Move.
I was at an event at the old BBC in London where I saw a presentation from the Move AI CEO, Tino Miller, talking around the next generation use of AI to reconstruct the human body, to be able to view it from any angle in a game engine. And I thought at the time, with my TrackAb product hat on, I was like, we should partner with these guys. Like, that's a good solution to have.
That would be a clever move.
Yeah. And so I approached Tino and Anthony Ganju, our other co-founder, and I said, look, I think we've got all these leagues. You're doing this visualization thing. If we plug our, technology into your technology, we've got a really robust, potentially market-leading solution for this. And we explored it for a couple of months. And then Move went through, I think, its first angel round of investment. And I got a phone call from Anthony asking if I wanted a job. So I left TrackAb.
So you quit a bit the corporate big data, big like service provider for kind of a startup.
For a couple of mavericks and a great idea at the time, it was. It's funny because like some people were like, "You're crazy," and other people went, "If that tech works, that's like the next gen. And that's what I thought, right? When I saw the way that Tino and Ant had built the vision for the future of the business, I was like, it'd be remiss of me, if someone working in this industry, not to join the next generation of human movement extraction. Like I'd regret it forever if I didn't do that. So
I'm a bit biased here, but I do agree. I mean, that's but I'm biased, so I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I think it's moving from that sort of larger corporate to a startup is like, it can be frightening, but ultimately, like, it's different. It's a different part of your life, right? That's the whole thing. It's not just a new job. It's a new challenge. It was an opportunity to go in as head of product and build the product from the ground up with the great tech team that were already in place. But yeah, it was the middle of COVID as well. And starting a new job, strange then. But yeah, anyway, officially moving, I think June 2020, so almost 3 years ago now. And initially my remit was head of product, to build the product from what was a great idea and a bunch of independent technologies into a cloud deployed solution that we managed to patent along the way, that we then have distributed, along with a really good relationship that we've managed to garner with Electronic Arts. We were introduced to EA quite early in our journey at Move, and the motion capture team at the Capture Lab in Vancouver really helped us hone the quality of the data for motion capture, as opposed to just collecting data skeletally. Is hugely important that you get really high quality data. And the EA team.
Just let me pause on that, Niall, because I think I need to explain a little bit for the audience, because we know you know about what you're talking about. I tend to fake what I'm understanding. That's part of my job. So just to wrap up everything you said, like, you're working in terms of event data, moved as a first leader in terms of tracking data, so all the coordinate, the XYZ of all the players. And now you have this kind of next gen where you move to motion capture with volumetric data. And I think it's not something, event data, people knows about it because it has been there for like more than 20 years now. And it's every time you have a penalty kick or a red card or anything, as soon as you have an event, there's something related to it. It was not enough for the people. At least for the sports performance guys, because sometimes a player doesn't touch the ball for 88 minutes or for whatever, a very long period of time, but still by moving around, he's creating space or he's doing things that allows the play to get better or to break the lines without touching the ball, so without having any kind of data or event. So this is where the tracking data came in, more context, more understanding, and now you have another layer. But the thing is, because some of the audience don't know about this, like, imagine I am 3 years old. How do you explain like motion capture? What is this 4D technology? Like, if you have to explain it to your nephew or whomever.
Yeah, I think I'll take a little step back firstly anyway, I think, into like the sort of football data side of things. Like, as you say, tracking data for a long time was actually a largely untapped resource in that spatio-temporal analysis. So looking at patterns of play, looking at possession, physicality statistics, things like sprints are incredibly important to monitor like player load and health, and things like injury prevention. Like if you've got someone with
high intensity sprints
and they're decelerating too quickly, they could potentially injure themselves more quickly. And the richness of that data, I think, had evolved over time. And then, the natural progression of going from center of mass, which is one data point on an individual per frame, which still outputs 3 million data points for a game across the whole game, has been seen as not potentially rich enough compared to something like skeletal-based motion capture. How to explain motion capture to a 3-year-old? Is that the challenge?
Or 6 years old? Just to say, like, how do you capture the whole volumetric? The whole 3D space and rendering of it compared to.
I think it's like how to make Tony Stark Iron Man would be the easiest way to do it. Ultimately, like, look, we use video to understand what human is, and then that human's movement can be added to AN, environment, scene, character of your choice. So the way to explain it to a 3-year-old would be like, do a dance, give me 2 minutes, and we'll make you Tony Stark. That's the way of looking at it. But the way the tech works in essence is that on the move side, we use a number of video angles looking at a human being, and we use AI to look at what is called pose estimation, which is basically the human body's movements based on their joints or their bones. And what we patented is a methodology by which to process that data. So we run that pose data through a series of biomechanical models that apply things like constraints to your joints, because your body bends, extends, and flexes in a certain way. Kinematic rules around that. And we also apply physics to that as well, so that the laws of gravity are applied to the human movement. And what that gives us is a resulting file or stream that can be utilized to power all sorts of use cases, whether it's things like character animation for video games, whether it's statistics for insights, whether it's almost like skeletal analysis for things like joint rotations, flexions, and extension. Ultimately, we output a really high fidelity motion capture output.
I'm Mariana Gutierrez. I'm head of the Liga MX Feminil. That means that this is the women's professional football league in Mexico.
So when you moved to the league, the idea was to say, okay, if the league was had the intention to create the female competition, and so they recruited you so that you had the full, I would not say blank page, but the full support to actually launch a new competition on the female side.
Exactly. And that's a very interesting question, and it would give us a great context. If I had to describe what actually happened, is like corporate entrepreneurship, right? It's been male dominant. Historically, we have our core business was developing men's competitions, right? So when I joined the member association, FMF, that's how we say it here. Mm-hmm. I had an entrepreneurship past developing women's competition, amateur. And when they asked me to join, they already had this strategy, this vision, this purpose-driven of developing women's football in our country. And the first step was let's develop the base, the grassroots. Let's start with amateur leagues, because we need to make it visible. The Mexican Federation used to say in that moment that we were in a high debt with our women's sports or women's game. And so I joined first developing the grassroots. And later on, 1.5 years later, I joined the league, because in that period, we also were doing the research of how should we create and launch this professional league.
Okay.
It was a lot of research time, a lot of lobbying with the stakeholders, how we should plan this, which is our audience, our customers, our fan base, etc., etc.
Yeah, I have a few questions on that, because I think it's I have two, but let's take the first one. It's usually a chicken and egg. Did you do the competition to actually try to drive revenues and showcase that there is a business case there, so that also you can have revenues to then cascade down to the grassroots? Or you had the strong political will, but what was the idea of the league? It was to say, more than the grassroots, we need also a flagship event for communication to make sure like all the girls and all the, let's say, the fans, whether male or female, can actually watch female football and have a business case. But what was the I don't know how to say that, but we had the same discussions back in the days as well at UEFA. So it was on the chicken and egg, like the competition was some kind of a flagship to help on the grassroots, or it was more the grassroots that really helped in terms of maturing the market and then go with the competition?
You explain yourself perfectly, and I would say it's an excellent question, because we have to say that women and girls have been playing football a long time. It's not that massive as in the men's side, because we all know why, no? That we didn't have the space and the proper competitions where we could held it, and obviously the cultural part, no? We understood that representation matters, viewership matters. This showcase that you're talking about, it was important because in parallel, we had a very strong national team development pathway. They've been, and curiously, and I would say it's not a funny thing to say, but it's curious that since we launched the league, we've not qualified to a World Cup. We didn't qualify to France, and we didn't qualify to Australia.
So many competitions.
Exactly. We launched the competition, and we started finding a lot of issues we had of how we had built that pathway, because we didn't have a competition, right? So we had very good players here that didn't fit in the amateur level now, no? So we had to do a competition for those players.
A professional, okay. In terms of pathway, it was more like the elite transition and more the professional side of things. Now, okay, I understand.
We did lack of that pathway for the whole pool of players, right? That became our biggest challenge. And we can see till now that we don't have players that have been involved in the elite system from a young age, right? The girls' academies, we've launched our youth competition, but that was our biggest challenge. Who were going to be the players? We had the stakeholders, we had the broadcasters, we had the political willing, as you were saying, but how we were going to select those players, who were the ones that play, who draft for their clubs, etc., etc.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of The Corner International. Very happy to welcome Harry Brown today.
Rather than looking for the biggest check in media at the moment, really what we're trying to do is to find broadcast partners who really believe in the long-term potential of Formula E, will put us on their core channels to expose us to as large an audience as we can. And that's obviously really vital for us to build a fan base, but it's also really vital for us to support our teams and manufacturers who invest in participating in Formula E, and our sponsors as well, who are obviously paid to make sure that their association with Formula E is shown to as many people as possible, and the storytelling around that. In terms of where the audience comes from, much of the audience is as you'd expect in core motorsports markets: UK, Germany, France, Italy, US, China as well, increasingly. But then also what we find is when we go racing in the likes of Indonesia or Brazil or even Cape Town for the first time this year as well, we find that we can create really great broadcast relationships off the back of those pinnacle races, which means and bring a lot of audience to all of the races across the season off the back of those broadcast relationships that we've built. So last year when we went to Jakarta for the first time, we found that Indonesia became one of our biggest broadcast markets in terms of audience, really as a result of the fact the fans really bought into the product that was bringing tier one racing to their country for the first time on four wheels. They have a big motorcycling heritage there as well. And that meant that off the back of the strength of that broadcast relationship, we're able to really grow the
grow our fan base in Indonesia, and that was a great success story. So it's a bit of a combination of those core markets where you'd see it traditionally, and then growth markets where we are starting to make a bigger splash as well.
Got it. And just overall, in terms of the percentage of the media rights piece in the whole overall finances of Formula E, like what percentage does it represent in the overall Formula E organization?
It's a single-digit percentage at the moment. Our main revenue streams I mentioned are absolutely sponsorship, and then we also take another significant revenue stream is from governments and local promoters who will work with us to take the racing to their country as well, and so that's the kind of second biggest category.
Okay, interesting, and it shows that the organization is healthy because it's not dependent on media rights. Obviously, there are other investments coming from different places, but I'm assuming there's still a challenge to grow that revenue on the media rights side of things.
Absolutely, and if you look at any tier one sport, and that's our ambition to become a tier one sport, a big part of the pie is always coming from media rights, and we know that's where we want to get to. What are the factors in whether you can get a large check from a media company? You need to have that fan base that's willing to watch, to fund the ad model, or to subscribe to watch to get the subscription revenue. And our priority is really to make sure that we have a fan base that's big enough that we can start to dictate those kinds of fees. At the moment, as I say, the strategy is all about growing that fan base, and for that we want to work with broadcast partners who will give us great production, promote us, and put our product in a really prominent place on their platforms. Used a lot of P's there for some reason, but maybe that'll help.
Yep. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming David Fowler. Yep, you're not a real entrepreneur until you have to do your first bunch of layoffs and understand the complexities behind it, and it is a tough exercise.
Have you been there?
Huh?
Have you been there?
Unfortunately, I have. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have. It's not a fun exercise.
It's good. Yeah.
But nice. And so, like, taking one step. So you go to FIFA. You go from FIFA to Maikuju to now your entrepreneurial journey. So tell us more about Sports Tech Match. What are you looking to solve? Why did you actually go in that entrepreneurial journey, having just stated how complex and hard it might be along the way? So tell us more about the whole project.
Yeah, great. So it's I guess I mentioned previously, like, the excitement, but also the frustration of being on the receiving end of many inquiries while at FIFA from sports tech companies as the whole ecosystem was growing fast. And having been through the Maikuju project, I experienced the frustrations of trying to play a role in growing a business from a sales and marketing perspective. And the long procurement cycles that we faced, the frankly quite poorly managed RFP processes that we were part of. I think one of the common experiences that I'm sure resonates with many tech companies out there is that you read in the sports industry media that somebody has won a tender, and you never were made aware of the tender at all, so you never had a chance to participate in it. And it's hugely frustrating when you believe so strongly in the product you're building and the people around you, and you believe that your capabilities are well matched to the requirements of the let's say the buyer in any case. So that's really both sides of the sort of divide, if you like. And I felt there must be a better way to bring these two sides together to solve some of these challenges. So I think what we're building is a procurement platform for the buyer side. So we've built the first tools that will help buyers to evaluate the growing number of sports tech vendors that are in the market, to do so anonymously. So one of our key USPs is again, going back to the sort of risk of spamming and the risk of cold calling, we enable rights holders and their agencies to effectively engage the market anonymously, find the best vendors for their requirements, do the filtering very quickly in a very lean way. So it's a sort of, the first product we built was a pre-RFP product, simple RFI product. And then on the vendor side, we're building a kind of sales and marketing hub, if you like. So we're building more and more tools that will help vendors to position themselves for growth, to win business. So, for example, we're about to deploy the first ratings and reviews tool for the sports industry. We've had a successful pilot program where we worked with about 15 to 20 vendors who invited customers to review their specific products within their product portfolio. We learned a lot. We learned that we actually learned that it might be possible to implement something like this in the sports industry, which was a huge concern we had when we started. Obviously, as you know, no guarantees that going from a sort of pilot into a full-blown kind of MVP deployment, there's no guarantees the MVP is going to work, and there's some differences between the dynamics of running a sort of pilot and then transferring that into an MVP, of course, but that's the life and that's the chance you take, the risk you take. So I was super excited. But yeah, that's the summary, really. A procurement platform for buyer side and a sales and marketing platform for the vendor side. And ultimately our ambition is to scale up across the sports tech industry, and actually with the tools we build, we feel that if we get it right, there's a universality there that those tools will also be applicable for non-sport categories. So the ambition was always to look beyond sports tech, and what that means we haven't yet figured out, because we have to be very, very cautious and honest that we're still at the start. We've just proven. We've just collected certain proof points. We've built a small community. We don't have I wouldn't say we have a full sort of, clear product market fit yet. Yeah. But we do know we're creating value. We do know we're creating connections in a manner which is scalable, infinitely scalable. But still a lot of refining, a lot of work to be done to get the first phase set up and start, investing for growth. So we're not quite at that growth stage yet.
Yeah. Interesting. And so there are two elements that come to my mind. So the centralization of RFPs, there's definitely an element where everybody wants to be made aware of the RFPs where they can potentially answer. But like to mention one of the processes I've been in recently was for a platform for a league who was launching its OTT platform. They actually tried to open it up as much as possible to as many companies. 27 companies actually answered the RFP.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, the need on the tech side of things is super important, but how are you going to make the platform relevant for those organizations to actually have more value than just reaching out to people? Because maybe an assumption is, at least on my side, that these organizations are narrowing down before launching an RFP, the people they want to talk to. They might be missing out on a few, but do they really care? Because nobody's going to be able to judge them inside their organization for not looking at the potential best vendor.
That's a good point.
So, yeah, tell us a bit more about. That's
a really good point, Samuel, because I guess in the end it all comes down to sort of human psychology and more basic things, right? So, and that's why the first product we developed was an RFI product. So it's a super streamlined pre-RFP filtering tool. So those 27 would come through a more streamlined RFI, can be evaluated very quickly, and then give the buyer the confidence that when they invite a number of those people to a closed process, for example, at least there's been a higher level filtering of all possible vendors who could deliver to the requirements. So that is certainly something that we wouldn't necessarily disagree with. That open RFPs are not always the best way to go. Hence why we would encourage buyers to actually filter the market in a more streamlined way if they do believe that it's counterproductive to go out with a public RFP for that reason, because it can be a huge burden, like 27 responses. Having run many RFP processes at FIFA, having 5 or 6 responses is a huge burden, given normally these RFP documents are quite heavy.
Yep.
And the responses are quite heavy, and you've got multiple rounds, and but this is all these types of processes we still find, and listening to buyers, there are very few tools to support people. So the processes are either run by, if you're lucky, a central procurement team, and if you're not, you take it on yourself as part of a business unit who has a need.
Here is my privilege to have a long-time friend in the industry, Jan Alessi.
Person who was working in our team, Marcos Pellegrin, who's now the director of La Liga in South Africa. He came up with the idea of World Football Summit, and he said, "Hey, listen, La Liga has these strong objectives, and they want to internationalize themselves." Tebas at the time was really started to talk about football not as a sports but as an industry. So we put 2 and 2 together and said, "Hey, there might be a space there." So we started talking to different people. It was very tough because we didn't have a single contact in the football industry, and obviously, well,
I have to admit, Jan, for the audience, that rings a bell for me with the Football Innovation Forum. I mean, from the story you are describing, it's a bit the same. Is you see a need, or you hear a need from a right holder, or from a person working directly inside that business, but maybe missing some kind of operational skills or capacity to deliver or to put that together, willing to promote it, to invest in it, but cannot deliver it. And then you are kind of the right arm managing to say, okay, we can pull this out together based on your needs to best serve your objectives. So it's
now it's a little bit easier because now we have a name, no? But you can imagine when we came up with the idea in 2000.
How was it like in 2006? The first one, like the first event was like when you compare 23 to 2016. I mean 2023, 2016. It's like nothing comparable.
Nothing comparable. No, not at all. I mean, it was an entrepreneurial project, no? So actually, we had a great idea, but ideas are worthless, no? And financing an event is very, very tough. And we had never done. We were experts organizing events, but had never organized such a big event. So we were actually trying to get budgets from different communications company, and it was impossible to organize it with those budgets. At the end, we had someone in-house who managed to do the event for very little money, no? So actually the budget of the first edition of World Football Summit has nothing to do with the budget that we have today, which is a lot larger. But we had to take a bet, no? And 2 months before that first edition, we weren't sure whether we would make it or not, no? And at the end, we actually managed to break even in that first edition. But like 90% of the attendees were Spanish, were local. Now it's 60% or close to 60% are international. We have many more attendees than before. So yeah, it was a big challenge. But we knew that if we did a first edition and that it looked successful and that the people that participated, then we could build on that success, and each edition would become bigger and bigger, which is what happened, and which is what normally happens with any sorts of event, no? So
you need to start small. I mean, for any kind of project, you cannot go like, except if you have a big investment or a big financial tech where you can think big to a certain extent. Otherwise, you always start, even for a project, you need to start to small. You test it, whether it's a crash test, and whether it works or not, and then you build on it, and then you expand. And if there is some kind of satisfaction or first ROI, then it goes. Just sidetracking a little bit, because on the business side of things, and I know the event industry is quite tough, and you mentioned as well the PR or the publishing one, which has been also having quite a hard time. What's your view on, not necessarily like giving the numbers on World Football Summit, but the the idea of being profitable or break even. It's like it feels like going also to these events. It's always harder. I mean, it's hard also to get the ROI for everybody involved because you have people paying for it for their brand exposure. You have potentially, I know, startups coming in that wants to leverage it, or other kind of agencies or sponsors. But what's the evolution you've seen a bit in the event industry, and how can you really make it profitable? Because one of your points I'm I'm alluding to is the one where you said it's tough to be break even, and I know the event industry is a very tough game. So I would like to hear it from you because that's actually the core of your business.
Yeah, I mean, it's there are many challenges, no, when setting up an event, and obviously making it commercially viable is probably the biggest of challenge. No, it costs a lot to organize such an event, no, and securing enough revenue, no, to be able to celebrate it. Obviously, now we have a very strong and long track record. So many of our partners, they partner with us not only for the event, but throughout the year. No, through all of the events that we've celebrated, we've managed to build a platform where we try and service the industry 365 days a year. No, and we've done events in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, hopefully soon in America. So many of our, and football and sports is a very global industry. So the fact that we have such an international database allows us to offer services, and to generate revenue throughout the year, and not only just for the event, which...
So yeah, it's not just a one-off. Then it's a 360. I mean, it's a 365 days connection, networking possibility, and getting to know the key people.
Yeah, I mean, we have a weekly newsletter, which before we only promoted our event, and what we were doing. And now instead, we have interviews. Now we've recently set up also a podcast.
Bhavesh, nice to have you here. How different is it, and how similar is it working for an international league in the US and an international broadcaster based out of the Middle East?
I think they're two sides of the same coin. I think they both have a mission towards serving fans globally. One's more on the creating of the IP and creating of the thing that drives the fandom, and the other is about delivering it and bringing it and communicating and giving fans a way to experience it in a shared way. But both look at it in the same way in terms of there's a global fan base, there's a global opportunity, and how do you localize that? How do you create that connection? How do you create those story touch points so that people can get really, really passionate about it and become even more and more engaged as they become casual fans to hardcore fans and everything in between.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it's quite useful knowing both sides of the picture, because you have actually all the challenges that you were meeting at the NBA and how you were packaging everything. And now from the other side, on the receiving end, acquiring the content, I'm assuming there are a lot of things that you have a bit of interesting background to be able to judge the content you're receiving and the experiences you want to deliver.
Yeah, look, I think both the property side and the broadcasters form really, really collaborative creative partnerships. And in that, they're able to serve the fan authentically and truly. It's not about one side upping the other. There'll always be a commercial reckoning every few years to make sure things are fair and equitable for both sides. But you have to think about it as a collaboration and a partnership. And that, when you look at that and you peel the onion and go in a little deeper, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is serve the fan and create real experiences for them to connect with, create real opportunities for them to engage and go deeper in a way that touches them and makes them feel really, really excited about being part of this global phenomenon in whatever sport that is. And that's the beauty of it these days. I think it used to be the big 3 or 4 sports. Now it's become dozens and dozens of places that you can really lean in as a fan. And I think we do that uniquely as a broadcaster But I think the same way the NBA is monitoring what's happening with all these other sports and always looking to reinvent, innovate, and stay ahead so that it doesn't become one day, hey, yeah, it's on its decline and people aren't watching as much, to more, how do I stay relevant? How do I refresh? You're even seeing how they're introducing the mid-season tournament as a way to create natural touch points in the middle of a very long 40, 42-week season.
Yep.
As a way to create that touch point. And I think that's what broadcasters are trying to do when they have halftime shows and when they have instant game highlights. They're creating touch points that allow you to be engaged and not have to wait. We're past that point of you could commit 3 or 4 days or 5 days to a test match in cricket and pass time. People are going second to second. And I think that both the properties and the broadcasters are adapting to that.
But that's an interesting one, right? Because naturally you would say, okay, whether you're the NBA, for example, and let's take the example of beIN Sports, naturally, you should be looking after the interest of the basketball fan, making sure that they get the best content. But there's also the element of the NBA breaking up their rights in multiple ways. There's the approach of what's happening on NBA Plus, what's happening on the right holder side, what's happening on social media to make sure that there's as much eyeballs as possible on the content. With your experience, are you seeing leagues and broadcasters actually work more and more closely? That would be the natural sense of the story, especially now that sport is more competing with other sides of the of entertainment overall. But are they collaborating? Are broadcasters and leagues collaborating?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, the television production is a full collaboration. Every broadcaster that's a host broadcaster is doing that with the property. That's not, here's a check and come in and do what you want inside of the arena. That's a co-production in the fullest sense. So we're already partners very closely. But when you think of all the other extensions, certainly for us, we operate the NBA website in France and in the Middle East in Arabic, and we are the home. When you come to the NBA.com, we are the home as the broadcaster. We are providing all of that coverage that we do during the live game. It's our journalists, it's our talent creating those stories and those extensions outside the game and behind the game and before the game. And that is that natural extension of the partnership. I've seen plenty of other properties do this. It's by no means an exception. It takes more effort. It's certainly a lot more commitment, but I think the commitment is back to that cause. We're trying to create real fandom and opportunities to create deeper connections. We're not just exhibitors of something that we've rented.
Yeah. So basically, beyond the negotiation phase, actually, then the organizations work hand in hand during the length of the cycle, because there's no other way around it than actually working together to make it successful on both ends.
Look, I think there's always going to be an evolution, and the leagues have within, and the properties have within their sort of self, future growth interest. Important to always keep all options open, and important to make sure all avenues are fully commercially exploited. And so you'll see them do things to create digital only packages or things that would entice a digital native to come in and challenge the table a little bit. But it's by no means in a way to just opportunistically do something. It's more about making sure all avenues of fandom are fully exploited. Yeah. If all they ever did is offer a free-to-air broadcast package, would you ever see a streaming package? Likely not, because the free-to-air broadcasters have no reason to. But as they've really opened it up and said, we actually don't care how you stream it or how you broadcast it or how you deliver it free-to-air. What we care is that you exhibit it, and that we care is how you make it the most interactive that it can be, how you make it the most engaging that you can be. And then you look at Thursday Night Football on Amazon, and all of their production efforts are very much similar to what any of the others, Fox, CBS, NBC do, but in their own unique way, where they have X-Ray and they have other things that they're doing to just take advantage of that interactive experience that is uniquely possible through streaming. But I think that it's not because it's dictated to be a certain way. It's more about, let's make sure that we can maximize the exhibition of the games in any way possible so that the fans can truly experience it as if they're sitting there in the arena, which is really the epitome of it all, right? As you move up the ladder from a lean back experience to a lean in, you want that person to feel like they're standing right there in the arena and standing and cheering on their team.
This is my pleasure today to welcome Michael. FIFPRO is kind of the equivalent of FIFA. And so you're managing the members just like there are federations. There are also unions protecting the players, and you're working with them. Like, just in the 3 years, like, based on your experience, it's what kind of challenges you've encountered along your journey? like maybe in the first 18 months when it was a bit everything or widespread in terms of topics, but even in the last 18 months when it was a bit more focused on topical issues that are driving the game.
Yeah, there's always new challenges every week. I guess for the listeners that don't know, FIFPRO basically is working to represent the voice of professional players and kind of ensure that players themselves are represented in decision making, which can impact their environment and their industry. For example, in discussions with FIFA, like you said, we don't always achieve it, but that's what we're trying to do. I guess when I tell people, if you tell people you work at FIFPRO, a lot of people outside the industry, their common response you'd receive is, "Oh, why those players are all multi-millionaires? Why would they need a union, or why do they need a union?" When in reality, it's that top, I don't know, a couple of thousands that are making that kind of very high salaries and that kind of life-changing money. Whereas I think we represent over 60,000.
99% are not these players.
Yeah, we represent over 60,000 professional players, and the vast majority of them worldwide are earning a normal, stable wage, I guess, or maybe an unstable wage, but they're earning normal kind of salaries, or even less than normal, what we would consider normal. So there's a lot of problems which then arise across different regions of the world, depending on, I guess, the social environment in those countries, the legal environment, and the culture, different things like that. So sometimes that can also make adopting general policy quite difficult. For example, take the player workload issue. There's obviously of the big leagues that everyone would be familiar with, where men's workload, or player workload in men's football is quite a big issue because they're playing too many games. The top players are playing internationals, club games, just constantly not getting enough rest. But then you have other smaller developing leagues who actually probably want to play more games. So underload is an issue there because they want greater opportunities to improve their contracts or their careers, or just more exposure. So they actually want to play more football. So I think it's an example of then sometimes it's very hard to create a global policy as such because you have certain regions and certain markets on the one hand, which have an overload problem, and then some have an underload problem. So that could be a challenge then sometimes devising the policies which could be flexible enough to address the concerns of players in the different types of markets.
Yeah, and I guess as well when it comes to the workload, it's also because you have different bodies having the different competitions. So looking at Europe, you have the Euro for the national teams with UEFA, or the Champions League, but at the same time you have the national ones with the Premier League or the Liga One or the EFL, so the Bundesliga. So I guess you also have, for the unions, it's also, you have to, I don't know if it's lobbying, but you have to discuss with plenty of different stakeholders with their own views for their own competitions. And that might be also a challenge to navigate from your end too.
Yeah, exactly. I think the football market is very unique and it's so fragmented in the sports world. I think you look at, for example, in comparison to some of the American sports where collective bargaining is more enshrined, and you'll have one league, say like the NFL, and then you'll have one player union like the NFLPA, and they'll frequently argue and they'll frequently negotiate to try and get the best deal for each other or for themselves. But at the end of the day, it's one party negotiating with one party, and it doesn't have that fragmentation. Whereas you say in football, there's a host of different competition organisers, from say domestic leagues to continental bodies and to world bodies in international football. So there's a lot of different competitions, which then means a lot of different negotiation partners. And that's a large part of the reason why the calendar has been such a difficult thing to solve, or difficult issue to solve, because I guess every organization or every party is kind of looking after their own interests. And there hasn't been a solution reached that we would say for the welfare of the players because of that.
On that, Michael, I was thinking like CBAs, so collective bargaining agreements, have always been, I mean, from our European lens, we've always looked at it as a potential solution, saying like, this could be the way forward because North American leagues are doing it and they are doing it well. But do you think, I mean, I don't know if, I mean, from your own personal views, like to which extent we can replicate that kind of collective bargaining agreement? Is that something, I would not say feasible, but is it something we need to be inspired from? But do we need to tweak it? And if we need to tweak it, to which extent do we need to adapt it to our own situation in Europe? Because I think it's the way it works in the US is great, business first, and as you said, like one party against one party, like you can go on strike, you get the best deal out of it, but afterwards that it's done and you're going to work as a professional athlete in the league, and you're going to give like 200% until the next collective bargaining agreement, new negotiation. But I don't know to which extent it is realistically plausible in Europe.
Yeah, I think on a domestic level, it's relatively easy to implement if the will is there to do so from the governing bodies, from the powers that be. For example, to take a country that we have already, say, I don't know, we want to pick a specific example, but some countries actually do it quite well already. Australia, for example, we have an Australian union, and they negotiate directly with the Australian League, and they have a CBA between them, and they kind of work it out like that, kind of similar a bit to the American model like you were talking about. So I think at that domestic level, it's definitely possible. It's something we're striving, or our unions are striving to do. Some of them have varying levels, or it's a complete CBA or collective bargaining agreement, as we phrase it, or if it's a bit less comprehensive, maybe like a memorandum of understanding, or kind of in-between agreements that set out the broad terms or parameters without going to full CBA negotiation discussions. So I think it's definitely possible at domestic level. And as you say, once you get into that continental or global level, it becomes a bit more tricky as there's more parties and a more fragmented environment. But I still think it's possible. I think the players have never really been given a full say or a full voice in the collective decision making. And I think that's something that if the will was there for organizations to integrate the players properly into that, it could be done.
Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Ivan.
Ahead for us, it's a lot longer. Like, we have a lot of runway left to cover. But I feel like we are working on a blank sheet of paper sometimes. Yep. We're really able to do whatever we want and whatever we feel we're doing. And I think that's not only on digital, it's also through marketing, through innovation programs, through, for example, putting cameras on referees and players during live games, right? No other basketball league in the world is doing that. We're doing it. We've done mic'd up in the past. Now we're doing actual cameras to see a brand new first-person view of what it is to be a referee, what it is to be a player. That can be integrated to broadcast. It can be integrated to OTT. It can be integrated to our social media channels. It's an amazing piece of content to elevate the positioning of the league. But to answer your question, there's a lot more we can do. One thing that is really focusing my attention over the next 3 years, at least for the roadmap, is one, personalization. Be able to offer a personalized experience on our digital products to our fans. For that, we need to know your information. For example, like I said, favorite club and favorite players, and be able to really personalize your homepage experience and your communication with us, and that's key. And the second thing is gamification. We know the power of gamification. We saw it ourselves by building a brand new strategy. Now we need to expand on that. We need to build a gaming hub. We need to build more gaming products that can be offering more incentives to you as a fan to be part of this fandom, right? And we need to build the capabilities on a commercial level. We know, and I speak from experience, especially with Gen Z, that the attention span of our next fans are extremely low. And we need to be in a position to protect this league and this product where we need people to continue watching all the games of the EuroLeague. They will do so naturally because our games are so competitive that you don't know who's going to end up winning the game, right? So that's an amazing piece for us, and that's super important. But we need to ensure that next generation of fans are coming up and growing very rapidly. We need to be aware of that. Every day they get older. We need to be able to convince them and to be attracted to the EuroLeague. We need to offer innovative tools, whether it's a brand new way of consuming the product through referee camps, player camps, that's one way, but be able to keep them engaged, and that's gamification for me. Gamification is the way for me to maintain a valid, growing Gen Z generation of fans and be able then to convert them into loyal EuroLeague fans who will go to the games, who will support players, who will support clubs, and who will also experience the biggest event of the EuroLeague, which is the Final Four event as well.
Well, it's definitely great to hear somebody talk about the importance of gamification from our position as an agency, really focused on that fan engagement layer element. And we're going to get back to it, but on that centralized approach of a league with the clubs. But we'll touch base on that a little bit later. But it is one thing where those gamification element, and you were talking about meta. And I remember in a podcast hearing Peter Hutton say how extensively more engaged and how extensively longer the session lengths were when there were gamification and social elements alongside a piece of content. Like most organizations have no clue about it, but would have their jaws dropped if they actually saw the numbers behind it. So it's great to hear that you have gone through that process and beyond the Fantasy League, because Fantasy League feels like a quick win that is built as a standalone that people can get to, but it's actually for a relatively niche audience compared to the global engagement you want to get for your global fans. So it's super interesting to hear you talk about all those elements. But just one last final question on the building blocks, right, that we have been going through so far. What are maybe the challenges that you didn't know you were going to face a few years back when you took upon this role and started building or adapting to different platforms? Tell us about some of the things that some of the complexities that have come up along the way before we get back to monetization and the centralized approach.
That's an amazing question, and a question that I feel we sometimes overlook a little bit. But the truth is, working on a digital transformation process with over 6 different vendors across the board can be very complicated, right? Because you're working with external vendors who, some of them know basketball and some of them do not know basketball, but some of them and few of them don't know what the EuroLeague is in many ways, right? So it's, for me, the number one challenge is understanding of a product, understanding of the game. If you don't understand that, it's very hard to build a digital strategy and infrastructure that will fit our needs in the long term. So that's number one, right? So it's really the education and showing to our vendors our vision and be able to have a commitment from them and their team knowledge to be able to build that with us. That's really important. The second challenge, I think it's a challenge that we all face in today's sports world. It's, of course, the financial commitments to build a digital strategy and commitment. That's key. And there's a lot more that I want to do. It's just at the end of the day, I need to justify to our top management that whatever we invest needs to have a commercial and sponsorship and return of investment capability behind. And I think that's key. That's a huge part of my day-to-day. I think that way as well. And I think that's really important, right? The third one, I would say, is timing. We often want things to be done ASAP. I feel like digital is especially, I don't know, digital is really like impacted by this mentality that, okay, we need it for tomorrow when it can take 6 to 12 months to develop in the back end. And I feel that's a key part, right? Managing expectations, both internally and externally, and be able to have an honest conversation with our management team, honest conversation with our stakeholders, our clubs, our fans themselves, and say, hey, we know you want this, but I also believe in my philosophy of when doing things here, we need to do things right. If it takes longer than we have to, we'll take the time to do it. But we can't release things because we have to. We need to do it right, and there has to be objectives behind. And timing
is interesting. It's interesting to hear you say that, though, because it feels like probably from your standpoint, it feels like it takes time. But when we see the volume of things you seem to have been doing over the last few years, there's still a lot that has been covered, right? So there's that element, that nuance, because being on the startup side of things, there's always that element of organizations not going fast enough, or just people feeling like they can just push back things. You have done a lot within those years, so it's taking time, but it still feels like you're operating pretty fast on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, really. I really do. I feel like once you work in this ecosystem, I think your mind is a bit cloudy because it's hard to take a step back from a fan perspective and really see what we've done. I know we've achieved a lot. I'm extremely grateful for our management team support, our stakeholders, our joint venture, our partners, our clubs. and the people in my team who have done a tremendous work. There's a lot more we want to do. I think we're extremely proactive. And the thing is, like I said, right, we are working with a blank piece of paper in many ways, and we have the support and the trust to build new products as we wish, but always listening to our fans. And this is why we really send out a lot of surveys every single trimester to understand what our fans want, what they feel about where we are with the current products, and be able to take their feedback really importantly and significantly to be able to make changes. That's the main takeaway that I have. The fourth challenge, I would say, is also the trends, right? The trends of the sports world are continually evolving. Sports is not only sports is also content, digital distribution, and how we experience our product. And those trends are evolving every single day, right? So be able to adapt to those trends and capture those trends, sometimes taking risks as well to be on top of the game and be one of the very first is also a big risk. But we need to take those, right? And we need to be able to adapt to those trends. How do we know what the trends are? We need to speak to our fans. Speak to them, listen to them, really listen to them. Don't say anything, just listen to their feedback, take their feedback from different fans and different demographics, Gen Z to our average fan, which is around 40 years old, male and female, but really understand what they want and be able to offer a digital ecosystem that will fit the different fan bases that we have. And that's really the key, but listening is the key here.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoy it as much as we love creating them. If you like the episode, feel free to comment, rate, and share with people around you. You can visit our website, www.lastsource.io, to learn more about our activities. You will discover a wide range of articles and can subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest tech and sports news in your mailbox every month. Stay tuned for new episodes.
Le corner.